There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, and don't forget, this is being recorded. So whatever you say can be held against you. So just be careful because it is being recorded. I see the smiles out there. So thank you. But we had a and I think it was recorded at TETL this winter as well. So we're going to get started and we're going to do an introduction. I know Diane has called out names, but I think it would be good. First of all, we want to welcome Palo that's actually sponsoring this Lunch and Learn. And then we're going to go to the participants and get a background from these guys so you'll know what their experience is. And then we'll jump right on into just asking questions and conversation. There is no PowerPoint for this because we really want to keep this open and we want to keep communication flowing. The one thing that we would ask is if you do have a question, please type it into chat so that we can follow it there, and we'll do our best to answer all of the questions that come through chat. So any questions that you have during this conversation, I'll be monitoring the chat as well, and hopefully make sure that we get all of your questions answered, or even some comments that may be put in chat, explained and announced. So first of all, I want to thank Eddie and Stephanie from Palo Alto for being a part of this and sponsoring this webinar. So Eddie or Stephanie, you guys want to give us a quick introduction and where you guys stand on cybersecurity and how you support the insurance or what you guys have seen, and then we'll turn it over to the panelists.
Sure. No, thank you, Karen. Appreciate that. I'm Eddie Locastro. I am one of the account managers on the state of Texas SLED team with Palo Alto. Definitely appreciate the opportunity to be with everyone today and for allowing us to be a sponsor with you guys. Stephanie Clark, who is also on the call, she is one of my peers. I'm based in San Antonio. She's based in Houston. We've got a collective team throughout the state of Texas that is dedicated to the SLED market as well as to the K through 12 market in Texas. So we definitely appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys. Obviously, we are a cybersecurity leader in the industry. We work very closely with a lot of K through 12s throughout the state of Texas and obviously throughout the United States. So a few folks on the call I do recognize. So good to see everyone today. As a cybersecurity leader, our focus really is at the network, cloud, and endpoint, to secure all assets, leveraging machine learning, AI, et cetera, and all of our technology. But with regards to cyber insurance, obviously we don't provide cyber insurance. That's a whole different entity, but our approach really is on the front end of things and helping our customers secure the network to avoid threats and potential attacks. At the same time, we can provide consulting services either before leading, to prevent attacks, but also in the event that you do have a situation, we do have consulting services to help in incident response, et cetera. So definitely appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys today. Stephanie and I will both be on the call throughout. If there's any questions that we can answer, we're happy to do so. But again, thank you guys for the time today.
Stephanie, did you want to add anything?
I think Eddie covered everything for us, but yes, thank you again for helping us or for having us sponsor this event. And yeah, Eddie covered the high points today, so we can just jump right into the meat and potatoes if you want.
Good deal. Again, Palo, as you know, anything that we do with TETL, our sponsors are the ones that make a difference and make all of this available for us. So again, we want to thank you very much for being a part of this conversation and sponsoring this event. So let's go to the panelists, and we'll start with Mary. You want to just introduce yourself and let the team know or the group know kind of where you are and what your job responsibilities are?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Nice to see everybody on this Friday afternoon. And thanks to TETL for inviting me back to talk about this important topic again. My name is Mary Barrett. I work at the Texas Association of School Boards, TASB, in the risk management services area. My job title is strategy and risk officer, but for purposes of our discussion today, all that means is that I'm the person who's responsible for underwriting our membership in the risk management fund for all of the lines of coverage, but including cybersecurity. And I have a team of underwriters that do that. And then we also procure cyber insurance as well to back up the fund. And for TASB, And I also am responsible for technology programs and risk management services. So I'm not an IT person, but lead our support group. So I get to sort of straddle both sides of this as a consumer and somebody who's responsible for delivering technology, and also on the insurance side of that. So I'm really excited to be here to share what underwriters, so the people who decide what to charge and what to cover, are looking at, and just generally what's going on in the market for cyber coverage and why those things are happening in the market.
Thank you so much, Mary. Eva?
Good afternoon, everyone. Eva Mendoza, and I'm at San Antonio ISD. I'm currently serving as the Senior Executive Director of IT. I am not an insurance expert like Mary. I am an IT, that's more my expertise. I'm very fortunate that here at San Antonio ISD, we have a great risk management department that we partner with. We have recently renewed our policy last August. We went back to the market in January, and now we're getting ready to do an RFP just to see if we can get a better coverage and a better deal. So I'm here to kind of share that experience and let you know from our end what we've seen and what we kind of the questions we've gotten and how we can get funding for that. So thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Eva. And Thomas? Oh, you're mute. Don't forget to unmute.
Hello, I'm Thomas Molina from Corpus Christi ISD, and I am the ISO for Corpus Christi ISD.
Hey, John. I'm all right. How are you?
Stephen, I think you're not mute, so I'm going to mute you on my side. Okay, so we're going to get started. Again, if you can make sure that you're on mute, and then if you have questions, don't forget to type them in chat, and we will follow up as much as we can with your questions and try to get them all answered. So we're going to start with Mary. Can you give us an overview of the cybersecurity insurance and what you're seeing happening throughout K-12 in Texas?
Sure. So let me just start out real quickly just by giving some background on the risk management fund and how we're not an insurance company, but we provide coverage. But there's plenty of insurance companies and other risk pools that also provide coverage. So I work for TASB, and one of the things that we do at TASB is we administer the TASB Risk Management Fund, which is a multi-line risk sharing pool for school districts in the state of Texas. And we have offered cyber coverage since 2014. And this is how much the world has changed. Back in 2014, we literally gave it away. It was an add-on. We did not charge any contribution or premium for it because we thought it was going to be low severity, low frequency. So in insurance speak, that's code for it doesn't happen very often or it doesn't cost very much money when it happens. So fast forward to 2022, and obviously the whole world has changed in many ways. And our focus is less on notifications and social security numbers and PII, and really has shifted to social engineering, ransomware, hacking, all of the terrible things that keep us up at night. So we've had to adapt with that as well. And what we do with the fund is every member of the fund's liability program gets a base level of coverage. And then we have some large districts that buy higher limits, or they may go out and buy insurance from somewhere else if they want more coverage. What's happened in the last couple of years, and it really started happening in late 2020. So sort of connect some of the things going on with the pandemic here. The market started getting hard, and in insurance speak, what that means is the insurance companies started having more losses than they had charged premiums for, and they needed to increase prices or reduce the number of claims that they have. So that's what we're all experiencing right now, what's called a hard market. And the reason that that's happened is because when everybody, well, like lots of reasons. First of all, some of the hacking and ransomware is literally state sponsored, or is a business in some parts of the world because there's not other jobs and people can make a lot of money doing that. And they figured out how to make it profitable. So it's criminal. There's a lot of criminal activity associated with it. And the whole world went remote, right? And for a lot of organizations, that meant spinning up technology platforms and remote access to staff and customers and other people that they hadn't really ever had before. And so that created this sort of environment where a problem that already existed could really flourish and take root in what were happening. So the world changed, claims started happening. We always joke at TASB, it's not really a joke, it's actually true, but we're in it for the little buckaroo. So we are nonprofit, right? We're also not for loss because we have to have money to pay the claims, but the insurance companies that are doing this, at the end of the day, they need to make some money. That's what they're here for. But we all have to pay attention to what the exposures and the risks are. In particular, school districts and other public entities, local governments have been a target, right? So we are sort of especially targeted. And the reason for that is, one, we have a lot of sensitive data. We have limited financial resources, as this group well knows. Our boards and CFOs and superintendents are having to make really hard decisions about where we allocate money between delivering the educational program for the kids we serve and securing networks. And those can be hard toss-ups. We have a lot of young users. We have lots of sensitive data. We have lots of devices that are connecting into our networks. And with the pandemic, we had even more devices out there in the world making remote connections. We don't have a good history of investment in cyber controls. And then for the ransomware, the hackers and the bad guys who want to hold our stuff hostage, they have a perception that that school districts have a lot of money, right? They'll read something in the newspaper and it will say, so-and-so ISD's $150 million budget. Well, they think that means you have $150 million in the bank. And we all know that that's not the case. So there are a lot of things in our reality that we work with in school districts that kind of make us a little bit extra special target for some of the bad actors out there. So it's challenging, and the industry is getting better at underwriting. So they understand more about what controls will lead to fewer claims. And so they're asking a lot more questions. And so I know Eva's going to talk about like the applications, and she's probably going to have to fill out more if they're doing an RFP. And so we as underwriters are asking and digging a lot more to understand what the controls are that are in place in school districts. So we can, it's pretty simple, like good risk, bad risk. And an insurance carrier is always going to pick the good risk over the bad risk. And if they want them both, they're going to just charge the bad risk a whole lot more than they were before. So that's kind of a general overview of sort of how we got here, why school districts are special in this space, and why you might be struggling with some of the renewing some of your insurance. And we'll talk more about how you can get through that, I think, in the discussion today.
You're on mute, Karen.
Yeah, I just realized that. See, you got to practice what you preach around here. So I have to remember to look at my little icon on my screen. So Eva, you want to update us on where you guys are? I know that at TETL, y'all were in the process of doing some things, and maybe you got a chance to advance a little bit coming back from TETL. So give us an update on what's going on in San Antonio.
Yes. So at San Antonio, as I mentioned in January, we did go back out to the market, and this was a recommendation from our risk management team here at SAISD. They felt that at the beginning of the year, people or insurance companies are a little more open to taking on more risk than at the end of the year when their books are closing and everything. Unfortunately, we did not get responses that were lower, like a lower what do you call it, deductible or a lower policy with a higher limit. That's kind of what we were going for. We did get responses and they were great. We asked for feedback, like why the increase in price, or like, are we doing something wrong? Do we answer one of the questions wrong? And they're like, no, actually your application is very impressive. You have a lot of good things going on here at the district. Things are locked down. But it was really, it's just the market, right? Those external factors that weigh in. There wasn't really anything internally that we can do. So having said that, here at SAISD and our cyber team has done a really good job. We're trying still, and we haven't completed it, we're trying to change the culture here. Cybersecurity is not an IT function. It's not something that in silo, we can take care of 100%. So we did a huge campaign in October, and it was great, October for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but we really want to continue that. It's really not a one and done, right? This has to be like front and center, and with everything that our principals and teachers and all our users have going on, we have to constantly remind them, right? We want to shift this change that cybersecurity is just an IT function. So because of what we received back in the early year, wasn't exactly what we wanted. So like I said, we are going out for an RFP, and this is all, we were being guided by our risk management department. We're doing something different. We're doing for RFP, but we're doing a market assignment. So that, and now Mary, you might be able to talk more about that. Like, we've never done that at the district in the whole history of SAISD. We do RFQs, we do RFIs, we do RFPs, and I think our technology people are familiar with that. We know how those work. This market assignment will be something different for us. And I believe it's when, and Mary, you might be, if you can help me out, it's when a broker is able to select like one or two, right?
Yeah, that is super in the insurance weeds right there.
Yeah,
So that, which is okay. So what that means is, so in the insurance world, the brokers, when there's a bid, insurance companies can't say, well, I'm going to quote San Antonio ISD with broker A and broker B. So whenever your RFP went out on the street, whatever happened is a whole bunch of insurance brokers called every single insurance company they knew and said, I have San Antonio ISD, I have San Antonio ISD. And then the insurance company has to provide the quote through the RFP through that broker that they gave the market assignment to, if that makes sense. And so there's the middleman in that, and we don't use brokers at the risk management fund. The middleman in that, the brokers, there's these rules between them and the insurance companies, because they could give, broker Bob, $10,000, and then broker Betty, they give an $8,000 quote. The brokers don't like that. So they do market assignments where they say that, okay, this is the broker that I'm going to use to give San Antonio ISD a quote.
And so what our risk management team said, all of that is to drive the price down. Like, we're trying different approaches, right? Last year we just renewed. January we went out to market just for quotes. That didn't give us what we wanted. So we're trying this market assignment RFP, just hope that we get better, a better policy. Our policy expires in August. So we're hoping that our RFP will close and we can go to the board in July. We're going to do an update to the board, state of cyber, present everything to them. And part of that will be the recommendation for the new cyber insurance. And we're hoping that, we can come up with a better policy than what we have now.
There you go. Well, I have to keep myself muted because behind me, you hear sirens going off, and I don't know what's going on, but we always have ambulances and fire trucks and everything going by us, and I didn't want that to interrupt any noise. So I tried to mute to do that. So you guys are trying something new. The market assignment, that's pretty interesting, the way that's going to work. I think we do something. What we don't realize is that also happens with our vendors, our regular vendors, because typically your manufacturer will choose a reseller and they'll give that reseller a certain reseller preferred pricing, while the other resellers don't get that. So that sounds similar, but gosh, who would ever known that a technology person would be working on market assignments with cybersecurity? Eva, just look what you've just done to your resume. Wow. Now you know
The
about
ever-evolving role of IT, right?
who would know that as IT people in the world of IT a couple of years ago, that we would be, negotiating insurance costs. That's just one of those other responsibilities that as IT folks we're taking up and having to learn about. So Thomas, tell us a little about what you guys are doing in Corpus and how that works. Mary, did you have a comment?
I just want to clarify one thing, because this is being recorded and I work for TASB, and our job is to help districts be compliant. Okay, I just want to say one thing about the market assignment. What the strategy that SAISD's risk management department, that's a good strategy to drive down the costs and get as many quotes as possible. The attorney general, you're not doing anything wrong, Eva, so don't. Like, once you get past the RFP, like, school districts are not supposed to have a broker of record, right? So that's why they do that. So if you keep having these conversations about market assignment, they will affect the outcome of the bid. But if you take it to the next step, then you get a little bit squishy in sort of what the rules are allowed to do. And so, if we say we need market assignments, the risk managers will handle that, and the brokers, but the brokers will say, well, let me be your broker of record. And you can't do that. That's a no-no for school districts to have brokers of record.
Thank you for keeping us out of the stripes.
You don't want the IT or the cybersecurity person go like, I have to have brokers of record or market assignments, but that is a strategy for driving down the cost of insurance that their risk management department is wisely using.
Thank you so much.
Commercial, sorry.
So Thomas, did you ever think you'd be that deep in the weeds?
No. So, yeah, no, not at all. That's for sure. So, here in Corpus Christi, we were also looking for cybersecurity insurance, and we were looking for different policies associated to it. And as Mary's been saying, it's been changing from year to year of requirements for an insurance company to come. And we went out and looked at multiple insurance companies, and also had to do multiple questionnaires to fill out and then provide that information back to them. And what we're seeing is that some of the requirements that they're asking for are really cost prohibitive for a district to be able to even obtain. So we're seeing that being more of a difficulty that we would have to rely on. But we're also seeing that TASB offers an insurance with almost no requirements laid back still to it. They ask the same questions and the same information is being asked for, and they have two different types of policies, a $250,000 and a $1 million policy. But the questions they're asking is for their information, not really for a disqualification. So we realized that, that was a good way to go, a good direction to go ahead and go and move that direction as compared to going out to the insurance companies, which were asking for a lot of details. So what we're seeing is that if you do not have an EDR or an MDR or an XDR on every machine, it's cost prohibitive. We have 80,000 machines. If you do not have DLP running effectively in your network, then you're not going to get insurance. If you don't have an air gap for your tape backup system, an actual physical air gap for network separation between your tape backups, you're not going to get insurance. If you're not getting, you don't have, what was the other one? There was multi-factor authentication. That's become really, really big. And not just for you and your staff, but for the students who have email as well. So when instructions over here saying, oh, we need to get email for all of our high school students, and we need to get email also for our middle school students, those become now factors in multi-factor authentication. You have to figure out how you're going to make that work. And that becomes a difficulty as it relates back to it. Now, depending on the licensing that you have with Microsoft, you may be able to utilize that for the multi-factor authentication component piece of it, or you're going to end up having to buy a multi-factor authentication that you're going to have to implement as well. So all these become factors as it relates back to trying to get that insurance. And it becomes more of a, well, I'm not just looking at insurance now, I'm looking at all these other factors that I have to purchase and products that have to be to even go to the first phase of trying to get insurance. And we were looking at some of those numbers, and for an EDR, an XDR, an MDR, and remember, if it's an MDR, that means your staff has to now do the work. If it's an XDR or an EDR, at least you have support. They can support the staff, but still startup and everything else has to be done with it. I mean, we're talking about like between $1.5 million a year just for that portion of it. And that's not even talking about your multi-factor authentication, which for our size was coming out to around $500,000. And then dealing with the DLP, that's another $57,000 to $60,000 a year. So these are all factors in addition to, oh, by the way, you're looking for insurance. So you need to be able to lay those things out and go, what am I getting insurance for? What's the purpose behind it? Is it serving the purpose that I'm trying to get? Or maybe I need to be looking at what are the features of the insurance that I'm really looking at that I really need to get? And it's not to do payoffs. That's not what you're trying to do. It's trying to go ahead and making sure that you have support if an incident happens. And support does not mean just resolving the issue. It means being able to take care of if there's a data breach, what do you have to deal with? You know, one of the things that I would recommend everybody look at is MS-ISAC, because MS-ISAC offers a lot of free services for school districts that can help a lot. They don't offer the EDR, they don't offer the DLP, but they do offer other services that you can take advantage of that can give you an extra layer of security.
So basically, I think what I'm hearing, Thomas, is sometimes you have to say, is it better for me to go ahead and put that extra layer of security in and get a lower insurance cost just to maybe get that support that I need in case I'm hacked? Or do I need to get insurance to protect me for when I'm hacked, to do everything I need to do with support and coverage that costs more? So you're having to make decisions on where do I spend my money first and then come back later for that extra support. I think that's what I'm hearing from you. And that was also some of the things that we talked about back in January is what costs do we need to give up first? Where's our first investment at in order to make that viable? I will tell you, even here in Cyfair, we were going through insurance, trying to, we were looking for the cybersecurity insurance, and they asked us the question to the detail of, do we use SolarWinds? And we were like, oh my gosh, they're asking us if we use SolarWinds? And why are they asking us if we use SolarWinds? Well, you start thinking about the amount of money that people have had to claim because of some of the SolarWinds issues that happened right when COVID hit and the payouts that they had to take. That's one of those questions where the insurance providers are seeing where you're at risk. And if you're a SolarWinds user, that makes you more at risk. All of this sounds like when you're trying to get car insurance. If you've never had an accident, never had to make a claim, everything looks good, you don't have a teenage driver on your insurance, you're going to get pretty cheap insurance. But once you add your child on there, you might as well just give up driving, the whole thing. Just take Uber or something, because it's probably cheaper to pay for Uber than it is your teenage insurance by the time it gets. So that's sort of where we're at with cybersecurity insurance now, is we know that there are a lot of things that we never used to have to worry about in K-12. There are things today that I never thought in my 32 years in education I would ever have to worry about whether or not this was going to happen to us in a school district. But goodness, it's getting crazy. So Mary, what are things that as your job, and when you're helping find districts get insurance, what are you finding as best practices, or what do we need to start thinking about when we're working with TASB? Because most of us probably go through TASB when we're trying to figure out how to insure, or what cybersecurity insurance, cybersecurity protection, what that looks like. What do we need to do?
So, so Thomas, we ask questions. They're much less, they're similar. what we're looking for, and remember, we're not an insurance company, we're a mission focused organization. And for the risk management fund, our mission statement literally says to provide comprehensive risk solutions to support public education, right? So right now we know school districts are struggling with cybersecurity, and there's external threats and demand. So our job is to help everybody together who's sharing that risk manage through that. And so our underwriting guidelines are going to have a longer time horizon for full implementation, is the way I always describe it. So we're not, insurance companies will non-renew you, right? We don't really have that tool in our toolbox. We want to help districts get to where they need to be a solid risk. So we take a different approach. But I can tell you the things, I'm going to tell you the top 4 things that I know for sure sort of collectively will make a difference if you're out in the insurance market or if you want to buy more limits with the risk management fund. MFA is number 1 for remote access and privileged user accounts, like even just the privileged user accounts, but being on the roadmap that, MFA, it's, you got to get there. It's not necessarily a big bang because you have so many different things that people are authenticating into, but MFA, getting that rolling and implemented, I think in January, and I heard it again literally on Wednesday afternoon at a meeting with our cyber broker from the UK, no MFA, no way. And was at a conference 2 weeks ago, and the presenter said she knows of insurance carriers where if the underwriter writes an account that doesn't have MFA, they will get fired. The underwriter will get fired. And I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty serious, right? So what they're saying, what that is should be communicating to all of us is that is becoming a barrier to access coverage, period. And so you need to be really clear on where you are in your MFA journey, for sure, on that. So MFA is number 1. Number 2, and the rest of these are kind of in no particular order, backup, like how you manage your backups, right? Your policies and procedures around backups. How frequently do you back up? Are backups segregated and encrypted? One of the things that we see happen is people will come in and they'll inject something into your network and it'll sit there, right? And then they'll pull the ransom. So your backups are corrupted as well or subject to ransom. So really good, solid practices around backups to make sure that your backups are clean and accessible. One of the things that they're interested in is your time to restore critical systems from backup, because that goes right to the cost of the claim in many cases. If you think about a business, so not necessarily a school district, but like a business has ransomware and it takes them 2 weeks to get back up, they lost 2 weeks potentially of revenue, some revenue. And so there's big business interruption things. We don't necessarily have that, but a 2-week disruption to our services and programs and what we do in our communities for our kids is a big deal. And so we have a need to be able to get our systems back up as quickly as possible as well. The other thing, and this is a trick to put a bunch of things in one thing, is what I call the acronym thing. So DLP, Thomas mentioned that, data loss prevention. I know there's some inherent DLP features in like Office 365 that you can kind of tune and turn on. DLP is data loss prevention. So the rules and policies that are implemented to control the movement of secure or important data in and around your network and in and out of your network. So like I know if I tried to send an email with a bunch of social security numbers outside of TASB or even within TASB, I would get a big, like, this email's in quarantine. What are you doing? That's our DLP tool at TASB. Endpoint detection, remote desktop protocols, just any exterior, any access from remote, and then endpoint detection and response monitoring and services. So are you monitoring? Do you have tools in place that are paying attention to who's trying to get into your network? I think you all know better than I do. You're probably seeing things in your network being hit all the time, right? And you see it because you blocked it, right? And they just want to make sure that that's true. I see Mike has a question. That is MFA for network access for sure, but also, we have a lot of different systems, also certain accounts, right? So what you probably want to do is prioritize MFA implementation based on the security level of the data or information that's within the system that you're trying to prioritize. So like your accounting, certainly like your network administrators, the folks who work in IT, and then your network. So you kind of have to go through a prioritization process on that. Then the fourth thing that they're looking for, and if you end up having meetings with brokers or insurance companies, it's important to tell your story. So Eva talked about this at the beginning. It's cybersecurity and being defensible. It's not IT's job alone. It's not something that goes over to IT. Now, often we're responsible for implementing the technologies and the protocols and the tools and all of that kind of things and securing the network. But it's about the culture of cybersecurity in the district. So they want to hear about, what are you doing with people? Are you training? People are still our biggest. That is the biggest threat. It's people giving up their passwords and their credentials because they got an email that looked like it came from their friend at the other elementary school, right? Or it came from their principal or from the director of HR in the district. So culture, are you training your people? Are you testing your people? Do you have a program in place for that? Policies and plans. So do you have a cybersecurity policy that you make employees read and sign off on? Do you do testing? Do you do tabletop exercises? Do you test your backups frequently? So are you doing the things that you need to do? And then practice, like I said, are you practicing your response plan, kind of like fire drills? Are you doing all of those things? So I would say those are the four biggest. It was four, but I tried to stick in more than four things here. But those are the four things if you try to take those things away.
Wow. So, I mean, I'm writing down these as you're talking, Mary, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, we almost got that. Yeah, we're doing that. So, I mean, I can imagine everybody's thoughts out here, and you're thinking about MFA. Where do you have it deployed? Where have you deployed it? Where are you going to deploy it? What's your plan? We're all required to have a cybersecurity plan. We already have the policy that's in our TASB policy, but we've got to have a plan and processes to back that up. And I definitely agree. Your tabletop practices are the best, but sometimes I think when you do the tabletop practices, you sort of just take it for granted that people know what they do. Honestly, I think we need to make it more of an involved practice, not just a discussion. I think that's probably what we need to start doing, is not just talking about it, but actually going through the motion and getting people involved and giving that true fire drill is what we need to do. The red and blue, where you do the red and blue plans with your cybersecurity and how that works. So we're going through this and we're talking about, these are the things that they're asking for. But Eva, you were talking about funding and money and how you pay for that, you and Thomas both. So how are y'all budgeting for this? Or have you decided that it's worth doing this versus spending this? Spending this to do what they ask you to have in place versus spending the money for the insurance. Are you having to make some choices, Eva and Thomas?
If you want, Thomas, I can go first.
Yeah.
So we're having to make some choices, but we don't make them independently, right? I think as part of that culture is important for everybody to understand what the risks are, what the current security posture of the district is, right? So first we try to establish that and make sure people understand, these are the risks. This is what's going on in our cyber world, right? Part of that culture, we do have an incident response team, and we have kind of two strands. We have a leadership strand that includes our chief of communications, chief of police, chief academic officer. So they're all in there and they've run through some formal tabletop exercises. So we've done them kind of two ways. We've had a company come in, and we usually try to do that once a year. So you're you mentioned, Karen, you're not just saying okay, I would call all the principals And it's like, it's not like we're just checking that off. Well, how would you call them? Where would you have their number? Where's their contact information? Show me it, right? It's not just, I would call them, okay, moving on to the next question. No, we're actually kind of drilling them to make sure that we have a solid plan. And then we have the technical side, which of course on the technical side, I think we fully understand our role, but we need the whole district to understand their role as far as cybersecurity. So part of that funding piece is like presenting this to your executive team, presenting this to your board, and really you let them know the risk, right? You let them know what you're proposing, here's what you recommend, here are the solutions, here are the prioritizations, and you make the decision collectively, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm presenting this to you. Here's what I recommend as an IT leader. Here are the risks. And more importantly, here are the consequences if we don't implement some of this stuff, right? So then we're all on the same page and we're all understanding of the risk that as a district we're willing to take, right? And there's this like balance. I think Thomas talked about it, like how much are we willing to pay for cyber insurance and what is it really going to provide us? And at some point, like we've had the discussion, at some point, if it keeps, skyrocketing the way it has been, and I'll just let you know between last year and this year that we renewed our policy, it went up 150%. For the same exact deductible and policy limits, right? The year before, I was even able to throw in like, I want a tabletop exercise to be included. I want this, like this year I wasn't able to throw anything in. This is the one that expires in August. 3 times what we paid just the year before. And at some point, we're gonna have to make a decision, but I don't feel it's my decision, right? I come with the solution, I come with the proposal, but at the end of the day, our superintendent, our executive team, our board will all be on the same page to see, okay, we're going to go ahead and fund this. But I feel it's our job as IT to voice what are the consequences if we don't fund this, and are we okay with that? So far it's been successful, but we'll see this summer.
We may have a call in the fall to see where you wound up. How does that sound?
Yes.
Thomas, you have something to add?
Yeah, I love what Eva said. You're right. We should never make this a silo. We should be working as a group. We have enough silos in the district as per se. We don't need to be adding more. We need to be breaking those things down so we can have that communication piece. Some of the things that Eva brought up, and some of the things I'm bringing up to our team is what Mary said. People are our weakest link, but they're also our strongest link. It's depending on awareness. So one of the things I added for our budget that I requested was pizza parties. And you go, what pizza party? What do you want a pizza party for? I said, when they're successful, what I'm actually doing is spending a lot of time. I have a staff, and I'm going to send them out to every location, administrative locations and schools, with a mandatory training, 20 minutes, talking about PII and talking about phishing and talking about the importance of it. And then what we're going to do is a phishing simulation, which we're going to tell them we're going to be doing. We're not going to tell them other than that it's going to happen in the next several months. And what we're going to do is we're going to say anyone who has 100% participation and 100% no data loss is going to get a pizza party. And you start adding that up and it comes out to a pretty penny. But I believe that positive reinforcement is exactly what we need to be doing, not just negative reinforcement to our staff. Here's that stick, and let me go ahead and beat you with it. So we're trying to use that positive reinforcement to go ahead and do this. And you're going, well, how does that relate back to insurance? It's that education that Mary was talking about. It's the education, it's the awareness. It also helps with the TLE seal that we're working on trying to get. So we're showing that we're dealing with that education and awareness all the way down. We're even offering it to the students. So at the end of the day, we go ahead and we stay there the entire day doing training during off periods for every teacher. And then at the end of the day, if students want to attend, they can go ahead and listen to the same 20-minute spill about PII and about phishing to help them. And parents can do it as well. It's that education and awareness that we're bringing out. It's a distinction also for your district from charter schools that are coming in and taking a lot of your students. We want to go ahead and use these things as positive reinforcements to show we're different and we're doing extra steps that are helping other people.
Thomas,
Wow.
that's great. I just want to mention it because we're just working on a strategic plan. And one of our KPIs wanted to measure, we call them repeat offenders on phishing, because we always look at our percentage, right? And we float between 6 and 8. Our worst one has been 11. Our best one has been 6. But then we started looking at data and we're like, who has failed it? Like we've had 4 this year, every time. And we came up with the list and we're like, that's what we were looking at, but maybe rewarding the ones who have never clicked on one and kind of bringing that to light would be more positive than saying you've clicked it, each time, and you're on the bad list or something. But it's important. And what me and the team were talking about is like, we need to try to understand why. Like, why have you clicked on it 4 times, right? Like, obviously we have cyber training that's required. It's not effective. And that's obvious because you clicked on the link 4 times. Like, what other things can we do to make that training and that awareness more effective? So I appreciate the pizza party. That's good.
Stephen, I don't think you can pay for it with bond funds, but you might can have some cookie bake sales or something to pay for the pizza for the rewards that they do, or maybe just everybody gets a cookie break or something that you could have bake sales. But it's you're right. I think sometimes we find ourselves focusing on how to fix the harder parts, whereas if we can fix the reinforce the positive, you would be surprised at how fast that would catch on. I mean, even being in the classroom teaching to high school students, big, huge, I call them my football player dudes. When we would do something in the classroom, these big, huge guys would do just really whatever it took just to get a sucker. I mean, all they wanted was a Tootsie Pop, and they would participate and be there all for a Tootsie Pop, is just so they could have that and eat that in class. So that positive reinforcement, I think, is also another way to do that. So there may be more pizza parties than you think, Thomas, based on what you've done. And James even said jeans passes, letting teachers wear jeans. If your whole campus is taking this training and letting your teachers wear jeans, that would be very positive. We also had a question in the chat, Thomas, that they asked for MFA account access or MFA computer login. They were asking, what are you using or how are you making those choices?
So we kind of like what Mary was saying, we started off with the process of first VPN, right? Outside. I want to make sure we're outside is protected and our vendors who VPN back into us. So that was step 1. We went there and then we went to elevated accounts. Then we went to RDP and then we're going to staff. And what we saw from the insurance, what they were saying that they even wanted anyone who was using email had to do it, which means that would now increase it to our student population. And that's when we took a step back and went, well, I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if that's something that we can implement. Even we're seeing some pushback just from our staff about, I don't want to use my phone for the pass. So we're talking about now getting hard tokens as well. So I mean, it becomes a little more complex in that perspective of what we're trying to deal with. But the MFA part, we just said, this is where we believe we need to start, and we move that direction. I agree with what Mary's saying. You need to look at where your PII information, who's accessing it. Those people should be also using the multi-factor authentication. It really comes in handy to be able to have that lined up and placed, but it's not an easy process to implement, and it takes time. And I think Eva will talk about that piece of it, because I'm sure that she has already implemented it across her district and probably has seen some difficulties in what she had to deal with.
Yeah, fortunately, we didn't have too much pushback. We did have some, and so we use the Microsoft, and so people have to use their phones. We don't use tokens. We did get some pushback, but I said it was very minimal. So we actually issued an old iPad, and we were able to take care of it just from that point. Now at the beginning, you get the the complaints and, you know, just the concerns. But I think with MFA, since it's, you know, you do it for your banking and you do it for other programs, that I feel like more people are more used to it. So for somebody who's starting to implement like today in 2022, you know, I think it'll be a little bit more accepted. Again, around the staff, I have not heard of a district, and I don't know if maybe Karen or y'all have heard of one that's doing it with their students, high school students, middle school students. I don't know any, you know, that's doing that just yet. We do segment our network, you know, to get around that and make it more secure, but we're not doing MFA with students.
So we do, the students, we use ClassLink, and the students use pictures to log in. So you have to know what picture the student chose in order to finish their login, and that's been very successful. We actually even deployed MFA for our parents. So we run parents through ClassLink, and the parents, they have to choose a picture. So they type their username in, their parent username, their password, and then once the password comes up, they chose a picture when they initially signed up, and the parent has to remember what picture they used to even get into our home access center. So we've started that, and we've really not had a lot of kickback because we use those pictures as the MFA. So we're not forcing them to use their personal device or them giving us their cell number. They're just choosing that, and that really helps with what we call the little kids. They're already used to choosing a picture for what they use for login. So that helps a lot. We also, Thomas from HSD, Thomas wanted to know what you used. It says, Thomas, what was the description that you used for required backup? You talked about the required backup that they were asking for, and you used a description.
Air gap.
Air gap. Okay. So the air gap, we actually use the air gap as well. And basically the data goes in, it can't go out, and then it's analyzed in the air gap, and then it's stored. So it's even gone through a systems of scanning, even in the air gap, and then it's stored so data can come in, but it can't go out. And that's another guaranteed way of making sure your backups are not touched. So that's good. Stephen asked, do insurance company consider pictures and photographs as well as a true MFA? Have y'all had any, Mary, is that anything you guys?
I have not seen them sort of say, no, that's not. I think what they would say, well, first of all, they would say kudos for having it in place for students and parents. That's pretty good. They would say kudos for that. I think they would probably say that is a form of MFA, but it might not be as, and you know, you're seeing that more and more often. I do want to comment, Karen, on something that was said about more like Eva didn't get a lot of pushback when she did this kind of stuff because people, like, it's in the news. People are experiencing it in their own lives, right? Or with a partner's job or whatever they're doing. And so it's much more open. One of the things that we had struggled with in our program early on is that gap between IT and risk management, or whoever was responsible for procuring coverage and insurance. This wasn't really necessary. It was on IT's radar for sure, but the insurance piece of it wasn't. And so a lot of times the risk managers would say like, hey, I need to know these things. And what they would get back from IT is, you don't need to worry about that. I got it. We're secure. Nothing's going to happen on my watch, right? And then things would happen and they might not initially know about it. And that would kind of get back to risk management and the claim wasn't filed, and then there might not be coverage. So one of the things about this discussion and the discussion that we had in January that I think is a really important takeaway, if you're not already doing it, is it's important to be connected with whoever, if it's a formal risk management team in your school district, or it's handled in the business office or an operations area, if you're a smaller school district, is to make sure you are connected with the people who are procuring coverage, either through TASB, the risk management fund, or through an insurance carrier so that you guys get on the same page. And then you should be asking them questions about what is actually covered and what is not covered, right? Because just because you have coverage, I have a policy and I paid a premium, that doesn't mean every bad thing that's a cyber incident would necessarily be covered. So that's the other thing, is it's important for us to understand where I have coverage, even if I have insurance, and where I maybe don't have coverage.
Now, we did have that conversation at TETL, and one of the questions that was asked of the crowd is, how many of you guys have read your cybersecurity policy or agreement that you have with your person that's covering, or the company that's covering? Because sometimes that policy may say, before you do anything on your network, you contact us. So that means if you suspect, think, know for sure that something has happened, before you start any investigations, you need to call that company. So I know we can do like a raise of hands or whatever on the Zoom, but how many of you guys have actually read your cybersecurity policy and understand what that agreement means? Because when I'm looking at the list and I see the names, I'm seeing you guys, almost everybody on here is IT. So do you really know who your risk management, do you know what they agreed to? And have you had the conversation with your risk management to say, okay, if I think we've been compromised or I think this has happened, what do I need to do first? Because we practice these tabletop exercises, but a part of the tabletop exercise I think we leave out is who's contacting our policy and where does that go? And do we make a move before we contact them, or do we need to contact them first? That needs to be like step 1 or 2 on your tabletop exercise. And I can tell you that's not step 1 or 2 on our tabletop exercises as we go through that. So that's very important, Mary. Thank you for bringing that back up.
Yeah, I think, Karen, one thing on that, reading the insurance policy, get your cup of coffee, like do it in the morning when you're fresh, get the coffee, have your insurance person on speed dial, because it's special writing that we have in insurance policies, and that you got to make it all the way till the end, because the way they do it, they go, here's all the coverage we give you, and here's all these definitions, and then they tell you all the things that they take away, and we call those exclusions. And that's the fine print, if you will, right? So it's really important to understand what the exclusions and the requirements are in those things. So I'm going to give you an example. So fraudulent instruction. So that's when our well-meaning accounts payable clerk give up the money to the person impersonating a construction company because you have a bond, right? And you're paying big dollars to a construction company to build and update schools. And they get an email and they go, oh, okay, I'll just update it here. And they wire them $1.5 million. That's a bad day for everybody. Your policy, like I know our coverage has this, says that will not be covered unless the person in the finance office verified the request through a means other than by which the request came in, right? So that means that if they just go, okay, I'm going to do it, you might not have coverage under your policy for that. So it's really important to do that. The reporting claims, and Thomas mentioned part of having insurance is having the support. So if you have coverage with us, we're going to hand you over to our expert claims handlers through Beasley right away. And they're going to get in there and give you resources to do that. We do not put a deductible on our coverage. And part of the reason that we don't put a deductible, we don't want anybody to have the conversation like, but we have a deductible. Maybe I can handle this and it won't cost us any money. We want to get our members straight to resources to have outside help and support as they come in. So all of those terms and requirements are going to be in the policy. Many policies say you have to use our people. And if you use somebody other than our people, then you jeopardize coverage. It's not necessarily a flat exclusion. So reading those exclusions and going through some what if scenarios to understand what your responsibilities would be in the event that there is an incident is critically important. And I think the that's where the connection between the response team and risk management and you all is really critical. Like, what does this really look like on a practical basis? Like the risk manager might be like, oh, they do that. And then you guys would be like, I don't think we would do that. Right. And so you have to close those gaps.
That's great information. So Evan, Thomas, have you guys had the opportunity to go through that and meet with your insurers to, your insurance company to have those discussions?
So they've been part of our tabletop exercise before. So not really the insurance company, but we have a risk consultant that the district partners with. So they've come in, then our internal risk management team. So when we've had formal, and I say formal because sometimes we do them informally, like I'll run them or a director will run them. And it's usually one we found online and we'll kind of go through the questions. But then we have the formal ones where a company comes in and they'll sit in on those. So I know like one of the questions I had, like I'm looking through the policy, I'm like, okay, we have an incident, like who's going to come help? Like I want the name of the company so I can go research them. And it was like a group. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to know who's going to come help. Like, what if they're not good? Like, I want to know now. And that wasn't something, it's like, no, there's this group and then they'll just get pulled from there. And I'm like, okay. So, yeah.
Thomas, anything to add?
Yeah, before we started looking for the insurance, that was one of my first tasks I was given was to find insurance for us. I actually met with several school districts, including yours, Karen, and also San Antonio's and several others, and then a couple of counties. So I had a good perspective of what the insurances were giving or not giving, and of course TASB as well. I've met with all of those people as well. So I had a good perspective. So I was kind of more aware of what I need to make sure I read and understood. So when I reached out to our risk management team, I spent some time with them, and they actually have come back multiple times to us and said, we're going to do this. Is that acceptable to you? Please read this information and make sure that you feel comfortable with it. And we did that, and then they were waiting for us to actually reply before they moved forward with it. So that was very helpful, and it was nice to be intertwined with that conversation.
So we're talking about, risk management, we're talking about insurance and what we do. So as we're wanting to implement MFA and we want to implement EDM, and, there's a lot of things that we've gone through that said this is the best thing that we need to implement. Can your vendor selection affect your insurability? I gave the example of SolarWinds, so we know that can. Have you had any other incidences where selecting the vendor or a product helped you or hurt you?
I don't have an example. Go ahead.
You want to go ahead?
I don't have a specific example like that we've dealt with, and we haven't actually been asked that specific question, Karen, but I mean, I think it's always important, right? So one of the big things that we say, if you get, ransom attacked or just have a cyber incident, one of the things that gets degraded is your reputation, right? So it's the same thing with these vendors, right? As you're in this industry, in this tech industry, and if you do get hit, just overall, it might be the perception, it might be reality, it might not be, but either way, your reputation in that industry will be hurt. And so I think it's very important. Again, we don't have a specific example, Thomas might, but I still think it's important when you're selecting the vendors. One of the other things is the data sharing agreements that we talk a lot about with your vendors to make sure those are in place. And at least, you can confirm and verify that, they're taking practices just as you are to protect their network and your data.
So on the vendor question, and this might seem obvious, but maybe not. It might be an insurance nerd thing. What the carriers are worried about is, like I heard it last year, they were calling them 0-day events, right? So that's when you have a cloud provider, typically like a cloud network provider. That's actually usually like a net positive because they know what the controls are for those things. But like a software as a service where you have sensitive data passing through there is if the software company gets hit, right? So they have a claim, right? And then that spawns business interruption and other losses potentially to their clients. So they call that a 0-day event. What they called it on Wednesday was a systemic loss. So they've dialed the rhetoric back on that one a little bit. That sounds a little systemic loss. And so Eva's exactly right. Like the reputation of those companies, if there's even a whiff, is really out there. And so usually what they're looking for is if there's an active event that's happening, are you exposed to an active event? If you're in the market to buy new coverage is kind of what they're looking at, right? So if you were out in the market the day after the SolarWinds thing made the news, the underwriter probably wanted to know. So some of those things, there's like shelf life on them, right? And it's important, you guys know this, of course, there's vendors and then there's all their products and versions and pieces and parts and the add-ons and all of the things that they do. And oftentimes the vulnerability that allowed an attack to be successful, you may be a client of that company, but you may not be using whatever the piece of the product was that had that with the vulnerability that allowed the event to happen.
So when we went out for insurance and we were asking of the different insurance companies, they did make some interesting statements, like they did not prefer a multi-factor authentication. They use SMS messaging. They wanted to be an application, not an SMS messaging. When we were talking about an MDR, they were saying an MDR is not an MDR is not an MDR. So they have preferred MDRs that they would have a list of saying these are the ones we prefer. So you're paying for the name along with the MDR solution, which was you were going like, well wait a minute, that doesn't really fit our protection profile that we had assigned for that type of security. So those are becoming factors that we are beginning to see. And like I said, as the insurance companies keep on evolving and these claims keep on occurring, I think you may see more and more of these type of restrictions.
I agree. I think, even now, all of the news coming about, beware of Russia, these kinds of things, and where you have software hosted or where you're trying to get to, what are you doing with your firewalls for geolocation blocking and those kinds of things. I think we're going to be asked more, and we're going to see what insurance companies are going to see what risk we are. I mean, we've done that with home insurance, we've done it with car insurance, we've done it even with certain health insurances. They want to know what risk you are. So now comes cybersecurity. How at risk is your district? Where are you at? What have you put in place? So just between Eva and Thomas, you're trying to improve your security posture. When you're looking at your security posture today, what are the top 3 initiatives that you hope to do to improve your security posture between now and this time next year? Because sometimes that's how we have to work, because we never know what the next, whatever it is going to come up when we're looking at security. Especially, I've always said, especially have a 1-to-1 program, we have 117,000 hackers that have a computer. And, what are we doing to improve that security posture with those students? And every day we have students that try to install VPNs. They're trying to get past, everything that we put in place. So that's one security posture. A lot of us are applying for the certification so that we can be, recognized as having a secure environment for all of our students and campuses and staff. So what are you doing? The top 3 things that you see you're going to work on over the next year to improve your security posture.
Thomas, you want to go first? I keep going first. It's your turn.
All right, I'll go first. So there are the 3 primary things that we're looking at is to improve our posture is we're looking at our end users, and that's awareness. It's free. It's time. It's consumption of time, which is the major part of it. But it's improving the awareness. We do the same thing. We do phishing simulations here as well, and we do reporting and we do analytics on it to see where things are. I want to be more open. That's one of the things I've been requesting, is I want those things to be out there and making sure the principal and the teachers and people are aware of what's going on in our district and seeing those improvements as we're going along. So that's one thing, is I want to go ahead and improve the awareness program that we have here, and making sure people realize that, private information and that cybersecurity awareness, it has to be upfront and top of mind. So that's the first one. The second one is, I think when we look at issues as it relates back to it, it's going to be dealing with where do attacks occur within the district. Number one is 80% of all breaches are from passwords being broken in. So that awareness is going to help in that perspective. The second portion is what else happens is that patch management. So that's the second of the triad that I'm looking at, is patch management. We need to be more effective in our patch management. We're too slow. That delay time between opening and fixing something that's there is just too wide and too large of a time frame, and we need to do better in that perspective. So we're going to be looking at those component piece of it. And then the third one, which may seem to be a bit odd, but I think is very important as well, is the fact of privilege creep that we see happen. When people get transferred from position to position, they take their old authorities with them for periods of time, sometimes very long periods of time. And we need to go ahead and do better at making sure those things are not happening. When people are terminated or leave, we need to make sure that those parameters are set properly. And we need to do more assurance assessments with our staff to do that. Not an audit, because we don't want to be a negative term for them, but us working with them side by side, not across the table, and making them understand that these are important things and what can we do as a team. Once again, removing those silos. What can we do as a team? Removing that concept of this is mine, I own it, and I'm protecting it. It's the district's, it's not yours. And making that understanding to go ahead and do that. On that awareness, I'm not just talking about awareness to teachers and to principals and stuff. I'm talking about awareness also to our administrative staffs. There's several articles that I would recommend that y'all look at. One of them is an article that I read from IBM that was showing that the value of a PII information had a value of $157 per record. Multiply that out by the number of students, multiply that out by the number of staff. That's just your baseline. That's not even talking about all the additional costs associated to it. That can give you a good idea of what we're talking about. I saw another article dealing with how much money should be spent for a district on their cybersecurity. It's 2% of the gross, 2%. You don't see that. You do not see that. Look at that number. Find out what that number is, add that up, multiply it out, and you're going to say, am I even spending near that amount? That information that we need to give to our superintendent, that's information that we should be letting them see these articles as well, so they can be reading and understanding that I'm not really asking for that much. I'm asking you for a lot less than you think compared to what's out there in the district and what's being done normally. And then remind them of the third one, and that is the sentencing guidelines for the federal government in 1991. There's something in there called the prudent man rule. The prudent man rule basically says that you are liable if you are not, you being the superintendent, you being the CFO, are liable if you don't do at least the basics of what you're supposed to be doing, the industry standards. And I think those things are things that you need to go ahead and educate them as well, so they can understand what the parameters are in that awareness for cybersecurity.
Wow, that's very good. Eva?
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Thomas said, right? And we've talked a lot about, the people side, right? So you think of everything in, three-legged stool, people, processes, and technology, and people just being, just a large component of that. And it's almost like us in IT have to be like an advocate, right? I try it every time I'm presenting at the principals meeting next week, and then I'm going to put a plug in there about cybersecurity and talk about devices. but I always want to take the opportunity to remind them, you know, again, that cyber is not just our job in IT, but it's everybody's job, and putting it in their terms too, like, hey, CFO, if something happens, our bond rating is going to go down. You know, that will resonate more with them. Hey, principal academics, if something happens, we may, you know, instruction time may be lost. There won't be access to digital resources. So kind of putting it in their perspective so they can feel that they are like truly a part of this, right? So that awareness piece is just so big. The other part that kind of goes with that we're working on right now is policies and procedures, like written documentation, because today there's no repercussion. We do require an annual cybersecurity training. You know, people, like I mentioned, we send out 4 phishing emails and people click on it every time, and really nothing happens. You're not required to do additional training. We don't lock you out of AD. So we're meeting with our human capital department to see what we can put in place. We require that training for contractors, for subs. And at the beginning, like when we sign MOUs with new partners, we're like, okay, if you want access to the network, you got to do this training. They're like, yes, right, we'll do it. And then, you know, 6 months in, 8 months in, they still haven't done the training. And again, there's really no repercussions. So we're putting all those policies in place. Like everything's been drafted. But as I mentioned earlier, we're working on our strategic plan and KPIs. We're like, okay, by the end of the calendar year, 80% of those will be adopted, right? We want to put them out and make them formal so people understand, and that we have some meat on, right? We have some teeth on it that we can say, like, we can hold you accountable, and this is what's going to happen if you don't take that training, or if, you know, you fail the phishing 10 times, you know. And then the last thing that we're doing is a formal risk assessment, just, you know, all the way around. But not only doing the assessment, then coming up with the remediation plan for whatever comes out of that risk assessment. We do vulnerability scans. And I think last time we mentioned in January that there's a free one with DHS. It does take a long time. We put in an application, but they come in, they do internal, external, they give you a full report. It's all free. You do have to put your name in the bucket, in the list. And like I said, it will take a while. I think it took like 1.5 years for them to get back to us and give us a date. So it was like 2 years after we put in that request, but they do offer a lot of free services. I think Tom mentioned also, but those are very valuable, and those are free. So we should take advantage of all those free things that we have out there. But again, coming up with a remediation plan after, to make sure that you're addressing anything that comes out in the report.
No, so go ahead, Thomas.
MSI, I think, will do external vulnerability for your site every week for free, forever. And it's a fantastic looking report, and all you have to do is request it and fill out the paperwork for it. But that's every week. It'll come back and it'll tell you this hasn't been taken care of. It's been so many days, this many days, this many days. And that's a free service that they offer.
So I just put the link to MSISAC in our chat if you want to go to that. So Thomas, they're asking for the copy of the article. If you could put that in the chat and or send that to me, I will get with Diana. We'll make sure we share that. Also had a question about certification. So the trusted learning environment, I think, is probably one of the certification that makes the biggest impact in K-12, because they're so different. There's a lot of different areas in that trusted learning environment that you have to address. And it's not a technology job to do the trusted learning environment. The trusted learning environment seal requires all areas of the district to be involved in that. And that's really where you get your departments involved in understanding what security does, what data does, who owns it, where does it go, what are you putting in practice to be a trusted learning environment in securing your data, your systems, your students, everything that's there. The TLE still says that you're going through those. You have documented processes. You have documented processes with staff, students, administrators, and community, and how you communicate and work with your community. So I would definitely, if you haven't looked at that, I would for sure look at the trusted learning environment seal. The other thing to know is when we talk about data privacy agreements, make sure you have those signed with your vendors. The TETL has a data privacy agreement that if you're a member of COSIN, you also get the tools to get that, to have that agreement, record with who you signed it with, and what your structure is that you had signed with. So that's another area that can help you meet some of these requirements that your insurance companies are working with. So I would definitely look at the data privacy agreement and look at the trusted learning environment seal. And there's many other, the MSISAC information they were talking about. When Eva was talking about the DHS, remember, that's the Department of Homeland Security that has a lot of free tools out there for you to put in place and look at to help you give it a better posture or to improve your posture with what you're doing for insurance coverage and where you can be if that's the path that you go down. We also had a question on there that asked, what grade level is your cutoff for assigning email addresses to students? And also what grade level is your cutoff for MFA? So for Cyfair, we do not give student email addresses, but all students go through our ClassLink, or we call it our my.cfisd.net, and they use that picture authentication. So Thomas and Evan, do y'all have cutoffs for email and students, and do you do MFA for students? Thomas, you want to answer first?
Okay. Get to be first twice. Wow. So right now we have students using our email for our high school, so 9th grade up. There is a law that deals with 13 years old and younger for the middle schools that you have to be aware of about collecting information, and it makes it a lot more difficult for school districts to be dealing with that. That's something we're discussing now in combination for our middle schools, which are requesting to be having access as well. And no, we do not at this time have MFA for our students.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing for us. High schools do have, well, everybody has an email, it's just not activated. So for high school students, they are allowed to use their email internally. They cannot email externally unless we whitelist, like the Apply Texas and these other things that we allow emails to come in. We also currently do not use MFA. However, we do use ClassLink, Karen. So I'm interested to go back to the team and see if we can, turn this. I don't know if it's an additional module we have to purchase, or if that's just part of their basic suite, but that would be interesting to start using those pictures. So
it's a standard part of ClassLink's MFA. If you guys want to, call offline, we definitely will be happy to do that.
okay.
So in closing, about a minute a piece or something. Mary, you want to start us out on closing on where we need to go, what our next steps need to be?
So I'll close, but I feel like I'm closing on kind of a Debbie Downer thing. I just want to give some expectations for the market. Okay. More than likely your premium is going to go up next year, no matter what. Even if you're perfect, everybody's probably going to pay more next year. Not necessarily from us, depending on where you are and what size you are, but if you're buying insurance from a private insurance company, the average increase right now is about 70%, ranging from 40 to 140%. We've heard worse stories than that. So it's going to cost more, but I think the fact that you're here at this conversation, at this discussion today, is really great, because it's doing, and San Antonio and Corpus and Cyfair are doing great things. In fact, I'm making notes, Karen, about all of these things that you guys all are doing. So the main thing is to connect with your risk management department, understand the coverage that you do have. And it's not, as you guys know, this is not a snap your fingers, boom, you're secure. Just make sure you have a roadmap and you're moving through, and hopefully you heard today some things that you can prioritize over other things. And finally, thanks again to TETL for inviting me back and for having this conversation. We love it when risk management and IT are talking and working together. So thank you.
Thomas, Eva?
I think I just want to end on this advocacy piece. You know, we've mentioned a lot internally, what you can do to bring awareness, but also externally. Recently, I participated, and it was something put on by COSIN, and it was an advocacy group, and we got to, like, here in Texas, talk to Ted Cruz's office, John Cornyn's office, and then our House representative here within the San Antonio area. You know, they're making decisions on all types of policy and legislator that's coming through, but, you know, they're not really aware of all the challenges that we may be having. So, you know, if you have time and if you know, can go out there and advocate for this, you know, I think all of them were aware, you know, that cyber is a big thing, but they weren't aware of the challenges specifically with K through 12 districts and why we're different. And as Mary mentioned, I think earlier, we have so much data and maybe limited resources, and they're making decisions on funding. So again, anytime that you can advocate for our industry or education, K through 12 industry, I would just ask you to participate in that. And hopefully we see some funding coming through soon.
And I'll follow up with that, saying in my past life, I was the E-rate subject matter expert for AT&T. I would say push whatever you can. They do make changes there. They have, I've seen it, and it does make a difference when you're asking for funding, especially for cybersecurity. And I think that that can be something that can be added very easily, and that could be something that could really help us as a district, especially if it's a priority 1 service as compared to a priority 2 service.
All right, so those of you that joined, thank you so much for joining our webinar and being a part of this. I hope we got your questions answered. If you have any questions based on this webinar and what we did together, or something pops up, our email addresses are available. You can always email Diane as well at TETL, or email TETL, but we're all available for any questions or thoughts or comments that you have. And thank you, all of you, for participating in this webinar. We had about 31 at one time participating. So thank you guys so much for all you're doing. And Mary and Thomas and Eva, great job. You guys, we couldn't do this without y'all and your experiences. And Paolo, and for your sponsors, thank you so much for what you do. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and looks like it might be a beautiful weekend. So go out and get some sunshine and take care of yourself. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Karen. You do a wonderful job. I appreciate you.
Thank you,
Yes,
Mary.
Karen, thank you.
We appreciate you as well. We may be calling on you more often.
Well, I made so many notes. Like my brain is racing with ideas and learning more about TETL and what you guys are doing and what kind of some of your strategic objectives are and where those things overlap for us. So thank you very much.
Well, if you guys have some other topics or some other challenges that, school districts are struggling with, or maybe we could get on another call and work together, let us know.
I do. Like, one of the ideas I had, I just need to go talk to Lucas and Janina, is like even putting together something that's like, how would you put together a tabletop exercise in your district that would be meaningful, right? Just lots of ideas. So we're going to talk to some other minds here at TASB, but I appreciate it. This is an important conversation. I'm glad to see you guys spearheading.
Well, thank you. Let us know. We're definitely a partner to make sure that what you guys have, we want to be able to deliver to our district.
For sure.
We appreciate it.
Have a good weekend.
You,
have a great weekend. Okay. See you later.
See you later. Thanks, Thomas. Bye-bye.